Welcome to Truth by Billie Beene. Today's date, October 9, 2025. Time in Texas, about 11 a.m. Thanks for hitting the like button and subscribing to my channel. Some of the things I'll cover today: Atlas, Generals Meeting, and digital IDs. President Trump, peace in Gaza. Some of the sources I'll use today: God in the Bible Patriot subscribers, Dr. Michael SALLA, Hal Turner, BREITBART, Dr. William Mount, Stephen Gardner, PROMETHEAN Update, Plus. So let's get started. I'm going to begin with space weather. We don't have any incoming CMEs. NASA space weather has canceled G1 to G3 geostorms, so it's going to be quiet. We do still have a tropical system out in the Atlantic, Jerry, that's predicted to turn east away from the U.S. I believe it's currently at 65 miles per hour, pressure 999, moving west-northwest at 18 miles per hour, approaching Barbuda, but predicted to turn east away from the U.S. We have space weather on YouTube, formerly Suspicious Observers, saying that in the North Atlantic, we have a cold blob, that's what the weather system is called, that could impact the U.S. and bring an early cold winter. We saw that yesterday in an update by Adapt 2030. So that's going on. We have this from Prepper News. The Canadian government is moving to disarm its citizens, so Canadian Prepper, and now Prepper News, is opting to move to the U.S. And Canada is currently disarming its citizens, also taking down freedom of speech. The Canadian government has sold 90% of its gold reserves, and most of the land in Canada is now owned by the government of Canada. And we see gold going up to 4,000 plus, silver up, tungsten up. Prepper News says you see these metals going up when you are expecting war. Now, we're going to talk about Atlas. And what I'm tying this to is also digital IDs. And I received this information from God. And also the U.S. government shutdown. I believe these are all connected. Dr. Michael SALLA put forth about 11 sources, including Avi Loeb, a Harvard astrophysicist, JP, a U.S. military whistleblower, Dick Allgeier, a remote viewer, stating that with the U.S. government shutdown, that means that NASA doesn't have to put forth any information. And I see NASA now taking the position on its space weather website that anomalies we might see in the sky are likely the cause of these are 8,000 Starlink satellites. So we see the U.S. government, I believe, also putting forth disinformation. And some of these sources Dr. Michael SALLA cited also is linking the viewing and the information coming out about Atlas as being, one of the reasons for the recent Pentagon calling together all of its generals, admirals, and other commanders. I can get on board with that. And what I received from God was, what would you likely see if we had an ET spacecraft inbound that might impact the Earth? What would you see nations doing? And I came up with, you would see nations rushing to produce digital IDs of its citizens, a database of the identity of its citizens, if many governments were anticipating some type of cataclysmic events on Earth to make identifying its citizens easier. And I also link President Trump's rush to get illegals out of the U.S. as also being associated with a potential event on Earth that could come about from this Atlas spacecraft. Many are believing it to be. And I believe that the U.S. military views this incoming Atlas as a warning, and that would support also the reason for the Pentagon having the recent generals meeting plus. So that's going on. So Dr. Makasala brings out some information from Avi Loeb, Harvard astrophysicist. He began putting out information in July and published 2 papers stating that he believes Atlas is a spacecraft that's being piloted or controlled by hostile ETs, and that we see an abnormal path coming near Mars, Venus, Jupiter, going behind the sun. Now it's coming out that it could then go on to Saturn, but some are saying it could then come around the sun and impact the Earth. Avi Loeb supports the information put out by Brad Olson also, that nations, space organizations, militaries, including the U.S. military, picked up their first signal from Atlas in 1977. An interesting tie-in information coming from Dr. Makasala is a book written by Arthur C. Clarke, Rendezvous with Rama. I haven't read that book, but maybe I will. We have this from another source that submits that Atlas is under the control of the U.S. Navy Jedi admirals. Now, I've put forth for several years that I believe governments and militaries, especially the U.S. government and U.S. military, has had bases on Mars and the moon since about the 1940s, 50s. So having a U.S. Navy Jedi group of admirals doesn't strike me as unbelievable. But this source, George Kalavos, puts forth that Atlas is under the control of the U.S. Navy, and that it is a circular object surrounded by green corona of light, accompanied by cylinder-shaped craft functioning as military. Dick Allgaier, remote viewer, who engaged in a remote viewing that was double blind with 10 other people, they came up with, it's a spacecraft, it's stealthy, and it has a tractor beam. So it's a spacecraft, but they're putting forth is it has a tractor beam that's pulling an object that's about 50 kilometers long and puts forth, other sources are putting forth that Atlas is broadcasting frequencies and codes to the Earth. Now, one of these sources says it's putting forth Lyra codes. Lyra is a star system. Some have put forth that humans came from Lyra. I put forth God created humans. Now, several sources are coming out. We had Chat GPT put this forth in the last couple of days. The Earth's population is made up of 25% non-human and 50% who are non-player characters. In other words, individuals who are not independent thinkers. That goes along with information I've put out recently of my own assessment that in the U.S., we have fully 50% of individuals who choose not to engage in independent thinking. Now, these numbers from Chat GPT correlate to information put out a couple of years ago by Gene Decode that only 30% of global populations are fully human. And we know from the Bible that the fallen angels mated with humans and made the Nephilim the hybrids. And I submit, I can believe that we have a large percentage of global population, which is now, I believe, 8 to 10 billion, who are not fully human. So that's going on. Now, we have, Dr. Makasala brought in information from a site, GFL Station. That's a new YouTube site. It now has 140,000 subscribers. In my thinking, this may possibly be a CIA PSYOP YouTube channel. But they're putting forth that Lyran code is being transmitted by Atlas, which is positive. And it is my position that the U.S. military views Atlas as a warning and a possible threat to Earth. We know we have individuals inside the CIA, FBI, Homeland Security, NSA, and so on, who are controlled by the deep state. So I submit this YouTube channel may be a CIA PSYOP stating that Atlas is positive. And the guy that's the head of this channel, David Nichols, is being put forth as a former Buddhist monk who is engaging in channeling. So that's going on. From JP, a U.S. military whistleblower, he puts forth Atlas is under the control of ETs, and that JP, I know from the coverage by Dr. Makasala, had to take an early retirement from the U.S. military because of his interaction with ETs, which is negative on human health. So that's going on. And JP, the U.S. military whistleblower, says Atlas may be incoming with Martians on board who will link up with Martians on Earth who are living in under-ocean bases. So we have that. And I've covered what I believe is this Atlas event, the generals meeting, and the push by nations now for digital IDs. So that's going on. We had another remote viewing group who said that Atlas is a warning, and I believe this is the position of the U.S. military, that it's negative, a warning, a threat possibly to the Earth. We see a throwback to Ronald Reagan's Star Wars speech, and that Atlas may have no ETs on board, but rather be piloted by a plasma consciousness. Dr. Makasala summarizes his findings in 3 categories. One is it's a spacecraft, not a natural space object, but the ETs are indifferent. Some are negative and some are positive. So that's going on. But I think it's a great time probably to prep and pray. We have this from BREITBART. So we see President Trump busy with his peace efforts on Earth. So President Trump is now, and it's come out from multiple sources, a peace deal is on the table for Gaza with the Hamas to release the hostages by the weekend. I submit, if we have governments around the world and their militaries getting ready for a space event, that we should be seeing peace efforts on Earth. And we have this from Steve Quayle's aggregate site, the source RVM, that a man was arrested near in Washington, D.C., who lived in a tent, so I'm assuming a homeless person. My impression of this information is a CIA, FBI, MK Ultra individual who's been triggered. They arrested him saying he had 200 bomb-like devices plus chemicals and a manifesto. 41-year-old Louis Jerry, lived in a tent outside the St. Matthew Catholic Church in Washington, D.C. So he's been arrested. I submit the deep state operation inside the CIA and FBI especially will likely be putting out information to distract. And we have this, the government shutdown is impacting rural airports in terms of money, and that the IRS has cut 50% of its workforce. So that's going on. And we have this, yes. There was a mysterious crash in Nevada near Area 51 and the U.S. Air Force Base Creech. It was 12 miles from the U.S. Air Force Base and 24 miles from Area 51. A mysterious crash, September 23. So we have this going on. We have Nevada. We have Area 51. We had a plane crash September 23. the FAA still has a NOTAM in place, no-fly area, over this location. No other information is coming out, but we did have a source say they had gone to this crash site about September 25, 2 days after the alleged crash, and the debris field had been picked up. So we see something mysterious going on there. From Stephen Gardner, we have the CIA is now releasing documents that show JB was in a pay-for-play relationship with Ukraine. We recall his son, Hunter Biden, was on the board of directors of Burisma, a Ukraine energy company. He was receiving millions, and so was JB. I submit the CIA is releasing these documents now as another effort at deflecting American citizens' attention. I have this from a Patriot subscriber. There's going to be a meeting October 24 in Brussels by NATO to discuss invading Kaliningrad. Now we have this. We know the deep state. We have a deep state operation in NATO and the European Union, who are trying to bring about World War III. So we have Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. Kaliningrad is in this area. It's a part of Russia. And now we have NATO discussing invading it. I've heard military analysts say if NATO tries to invade Kaliningrad, which about 7 days ago put along its border with Poland massive bombs on launchers. But the military analysts agree that if NATO tries to invade Kaliningrad, NATO will be wiped out, or the NATO forces that try to invade will be wiped out. We have this from PROMETHEAN update. President Trump's tariffs do not cause inflation. And we know they're bringing in billions of dollars to the U.S. government, and President Trump is discussing giving out of the surplus brought in by the tariffs and giving a check to American citizens, up to $2,000 per American citizen. And we say, President Trump, bring it. We have this. Yes, MI6. So this deep state, we know, involves the CIA, FBI, MI6, that's England's intel group, Mossad, that's Israel's intel group, plus other intel groups around the world. They work together, I believe, controlled by the deep state. Now, I do not believe that everybody who works for FBI, CIA is a deep stater, but many are. And the UK MI6 is now putting in place via its Soros, Antifa, and other groups, Code Pink, inside the U.S., a PSYOP to turn blue-collar workers away from supporting President Trump and from supporting the political group MAGA. And also, who is going to stop President Trump's money policy? That would be the Federal Reserve, which is also under the control of the deep state. It is not part of the U.S. government. President Trump continues to benefit America and American blue-collar workers by increasing by billions, trillions of dollars investment in U.S. manufacturing. So that's going on. Now we have this from Dr. William Mount. He received this information from God. Future assassination attempts on President Trump. November 11 by the FBI. November 17 by the FBI plus the White House police. December 23. President Trump will be in his vehicle called the Beast. And, you know, it's very heavy steel, bulletproof glass, and so on. But another vehicle will try to ram President Trump's vehicle, you know, and kill him. And that we're seeing President Trump dispersing the U.S. military to multiple locations via the National Guard to Portland, Oregon, Chicago, Illinois, Los Angeles, California, Memphis, Tennessee, and Washington, D.C. I put this forth that this rush by President Trump to get rid of the illegals and also disperse the U.S. military to large cities could also be the U.S. military's response to this incoming threat by Atlas. Now, I believe the future is in flux and that we, the people of God, have the power to pray threats away from the earth and also to pray for the stabilization of Earth's pole shift and a rebuilding of our electromagnetic shield around the earth. God is good and he always answers our prayers. So it's good to be in prayer for America, President Trump, the U.S. military, and world peace. I love you and I'll see you soon.